away from their identity to live in America, i.e. if my mother didn't take off her job, or if my father wasn't Muslim, then they are named as a threat to America and what it stands for. A threat is not my name, and the violence of whiteness and privileges are not in my name. Without an understanding of relations of power, it is impossible to produce an analysis of history and difference used in order to remove or divest the perks and privileges of white and non-black people.
This democratic system only benefits the liberal individual who exists in a temporally and historically sealed vacuum made possible by the clear disjunction between past, present, and future, because the individual is this neutral substratum. Differences are cast into the inconsequential space neutrality, thus functions as the conceptual glue of the modern political project of classical liberalism, where we access neutrality only by stripping away the merely historical attributes of difference. But those who cannot abstract their differences have their freedom, their expression of power over which one has conscious and rational control. Stripped away whiteness, or the white citizen, is what valorizes, gives power to the subject. If they can move away from their difference, the decision of who gets power, the decisions about when, how, and which differences matter will remain about and when and how which differences matter. In the power of the neutral individual, this country is structured off the white citizen, and in opposition to blackness, the oceans are only one of the many parts in which the U.S. transports its democracy and expectations to neutralize the world. The current democracy is full of institutions made to control us in order to foster their interests. When we identify ourselves with, attach ourselves to these institutional entities, we absorb their values, their purposes. We become institutionalized, we become little more than robots, servo mechanisms functioning in response to how we've been programmed to perform.
Clearly, there are more harmonious ways to teach the topic of race, and the pedagogy of politeness only goes so far before it degrades into a paradox of liberal feel-good solidarity absent from dissent, without which any worthwhile pedagogy becomes a democracy of empty forms. This does not suggest that educators procure a hostile environment, but a pedagogical situation that fails to address white racism is arguably already the conduit for hostility. This always allows the white side to speak about slavery as long ago, rather than the legacy which lives today. It minimizes racism towards non-white immigrants today through a convenient and problematic comparison with white immigrants like the Irish or the Jewish. Whiteness is fleeting because it must deny the history of its own genesis, and the creation of the other. It can only be concerned with how things are and not how they got to be.
This abolition is what creates spaces for anew, what builds anew. The history of our oceans, of us as a people, has shown hundreds of years of institutionalized racism that has come to build this white democracy. It's time we move away from the institutions that uphold the democracy or transform them. And abolitionist politics shows that expanding democracy is not just a matter of changing democratic procedures or norms, but also about creating new institutions, integrated anti-slavery, knitting state legislators supplemented by mass meetings of black women, men, and children during Reconstruction, freedom schools in the back of beauty parlors during the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Panther parties for self-defense. These institutions offer new means of participation that run beyond and voting, potentially beyond liberal democracy. Civic education, deliberation, social rights, and civic associations are all important accoutrements of democracy, but by themselves or even taken together, they remain within the limits of democratic participation set by liberalism. This political challenge that requires conflict more than consensus struggle, more than agonism and debate, more than deliberation.